a real sharp spike because there was some makeup buy, right? People who couldn't buy or go out for long, they actually went and got more cars around the festive season and so on. So you'll see a very turbulent year in 2020 for the entire industry. And then again, towards the end of the financial year, we had the second wave starting to come up, and that again was a dent on the industry. So you'll see that, and then even the suppliers such as AS Gears had to go through a similar sort of ups and downs as you'll see. So in the case study, you'll actually see 2 years, because we want to illustrate all these phenomena, right? From April 1st, 2019, you'll see the data for 24 months, all the way till March 31st, 2021. And so in these 2 years, you'll see both the BS4 to BS6 transition. In the first year, you'll see that. In the second year, you'll see all the impact that was caused due to COVID.
GV, would the students know what is financial year, or should we explain it here?
Worth explaining, I think. What is a financial year? What's the difference between calendar year and financial year?
Yeah, that's a great point. So India traditionally has had a financial year, and that's also true for our government, our tax filings, and everything. That starts on April 1st of one year and goes till March 31st of the next year. So when we talk about financial year 2021, it means the period of time from April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. Sometimes in short, it's just called financial year 21, which is a little bit illogical, but because it's only the 3 years that come in 2021, but usually we always go 2 years before, right? We have some of the worst pollution in places. Engines is actually quite remarkable. And you can see the
Shiv, you can explain to us, how do all of these departments work together? What are the kinds of
to enable the production of the product that we are making, right? And yeah, that's a fantastic question, and this slide should help us to sort of talk through that, right? So if you look at earlier we talked about how planning works, is that you want to make sure the right amount of resources are available at the right time to enable the production of the product that we are making, right? And when you talk about resources, manufacturing industry has multiple types of resources. There is material resources. That means you have to have the raw materials that are available to start the production process, or the semi-finished products that are available to start the next stage of the production process. There is human resources, which is about the people that are required to operate the machine lines and so on. There is financial resources, which means you have to have the cash to actually pay the supplier to get the product and so on, and so on. So all of these resources have to be planned so that the right amount of resources are available. So if we spend too much to acquire too many resources, then your money is locked up, right? And essentially that is good. But if you have too less resources, then you cannot do a particular step in the production, and so all of the other resources will lie idle, right? Like it's a waste, right? You can't actually create the product and ship it to the customer. So the whole planning process is around making sure the right amount of resources are available at the right time. And if you want to really do that well, you have to go top down, right? So that's what this whole slide is showing. So you have to plan at a strategic level, year on year, what is the business going to do? So for example, if you have to create, if you think that in 2 years your demand will be twice what you have today, right? The number of products your customer wants is going to be twice, then you may need to set up a new factory. So those are called long-range planning decisions. That's a strategic business plan that's at the top, right? So the CEO, the CFO, the COO of the company, or means the heads of different parts of the company may sit together and say, let's create a strategic business plan that says, overall, what is going to be our products? Where is it going to go? How we need. From there, very quickly, you have to come to what happens month by month within a year, right? So once I know that 2022 is going to be strategically, 1 million units of product that I need to make, I need to then say, what do I need to make in January, February, March, and so on? Because there could be some seasonality. As the festive season comes, a few months before that, I may need to make more so that my my customers who are then creating product for the end customer is able to make more in that time. So that is what happens in the sales and operations plan. So the sales and operation plan is the one that marries the sales plan with the production plan at a high level. So the sales guys come and say, look, I can sell 1.5 million, not 1 million next year. Then the production guys have to ramp up for that, right? So the sales and production people have to sit together and say, okay, what is realistically possible that I have to plan month by month, which is basically sales and operations plan. So usually you'll have the sales head there, you'll have the production head there, you'll have the finance head there in that planning phase. Now, we may do that for 2022 today, right? But when I get into 2022, there are going to be things that happen month by month that is going to change my outlook. Let's say the COVID completely vanishes, very positive scenario, right? And then everybody wants to buy, like people are out there wanting to buy lots of new cars next year. Now that I may not have forecast, I might have said 1.5 million parts, but when I actually come there, I find that it's even more than that or less than that. Now I have to do month by month planning as I get close to the month, right? That is the master production schedule. So that says very close by next 2-3 months, what is going to be my production schedule? How much capacity do I need? How much materials I need, etc. That's month by month. So that's again done usually by the production head, the sales head, and so on. And then you have the material requirement plan, which is almost on a weekly basis, and sometimes it's even run on a daily basis to say, okay, I know how much I need to make this week. I know how much labor I have, how much material I have. I know how much raw material and work in progress I have, and I know how much I need to make this week. Let me now run a routine or a program to actually, which will actually spit out exactly how much you need to make every single day of this week, right? So that's a material requirement plan. And also it will spit out how much you need to order with your supplier for some of your raw materials. Similar to that is a capacity requirement plan. So both MRP and CRP are run mostly by the production head, the human resources head, the procurement head, and so on, because they are trying to figure out how much I need to make on a shift, a day-by-day kind of basis, and how much capacity I have for that. So the capacity requirement plan also says I might actually need to get more contract labor, or I might need to send out some parts to a contract supplier because I don't have capacity this week. So those things happen in the capacity requirement plan. And then finally, on a shift-by-shift basis, a shift is actually usually 8 hours of production. So many factories, in this case, ACE runs 3 shifts. So they run a morning shift, an evening shift, and a night shift. And on that particular shift, you have to decide exactly which machines are going to be loaded, which machines are going to go under maintenance, how much product do I need to make in machine X and Y, and how much labor do I assign to that machine. So that's a detailed production schedule. And production activity control then is controlling that schedule. It's making sure that what you actually plan to make that shift, you did make, is it efficient enough? Do you need proactive maintenance to make sure that the machine is running better next shift and so on? So that comes now to that. And then the purchasing plan, ultimately, which is managed by purchasing and finance, is aligned with the MRP, material requirement plan, and it's talking about how much do I order today, tomorrow, and so on with my suppliers. So you can see the whole thing is coming from multiple years to multiple months to multiple weeks to multiple days to multiple shifts and to one shift, and then machines within that shift kind of thing. So that's why the time phase, it comes from top down, it comes from a wide time gap down to a narrow time gap as we go through the planning process.
So as you go down this path, you're basically paying attention to more and more details. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. You're getting more detail within a smaller time bucket. You have more information on what is actually happening, and so you can be more granular in your plan.
And that, from our course perspective, basically means more and more data is being generated, more and more data is being captured, and more work for us to do in terms of analysis, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. So this seems. Can you just help us understand what this is here?
Yes. This is what you'll see. A lot of the data in your spreadsheets is around this picture. So you can use this picture as a backup reference. As you go through some of this data, you will keep looking at this picture many times. What this is called a bill of materials. So it is not a bill that you pay in a restaurant or whatever. It's a term that the production industry is always used to denote how the structure of the tree structure of the product is made up of. So
as you go down this
into one shift and then machines within that shift kind of thing. So that's why the time phase, it comes from top down, it comes from a wide time gap down to a narrow time gap as we go through the planning process.
So as you go down this path, you're basically paying attention to more and more details. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. You're getting more detail within a smaller time bucket. You have more information on what is actually happening, and so you can be more granular in your plan.
And that, from our course. Okay. So this seems.
So it is not a bill that you pay in a restaurant or whatever. It's a term that the production industry is always used to denote how the structure of the tree structure of the product is made up of. So as a company, what I'm selling to my customer is at the top, right? They are called finished products. So I'm selling 10 different gear assemblies, and this slide shows 5 of them. There's actually a full 10. It won't be fitting into a single slide, but those are called the finished products at the top, right? Those are things that we sell to the customer. Now, to make gear assembly 2, for example, I actually need
so these are the finished products, right? These.
Yes, those are the finished products. Gear assembly 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's also 1, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which is not there in this picture. But those are the finished products. Then we talk about sub-assemblies. A sub-assembly is something that's used at the next level of the finished product. So, for example, gear assembly 2 is made of 2 gears, gear 2A and 2B. So as you saw in the picture, 2 of these gears have to be put together to make gear assembly 2. So these individual gears are called, sometimes they're called semi-finished product, sometimes they're called work in progress, sometimes they're called components, and so on. But you can imagine, right? Now, to make gear 2A, I actually start with a raw material, which is at the bottom layer of this. Those are called the raw materials. So the blank 001 is what is used to make gear 2A. Blank 002 is used to make gear 2B. And now these 2 gears are together making gear assembly 2. So this whole structure, which is a hierarchical structure, is called bill of materials. So this is very simple for me because I'm only making gear assembly, but think about the car manufacturer. Think about their bill of material, right? If you think of a finished product, which is a finished Honda City car, for example, the bill of material, if you keep breaking it down, it will have probably 50 to 60 levels, right? Or very large number of levels, because at the top level, you'll say car, and then engine and transmission and so on. And then within engine, you could have multiple sub-assemblies, and then within that, multiple products and so on. So if you go all the way across the value chain, it will have a large number of layers in the bill of material.
So even if I'm using a simple screw, it would be there in the bill of materials.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot of detail. So maybe it's a good time now to start looking, Shiv, now that you've given us this broad overview, maybe a good idea to start looking at the data set.
Exactly. Fantastic.
Okay. So GV, we'll have Shiv walk us through the data, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you want to open the Excel?
I will open the Excel. I'll open the Excel.
So perhaps we can start. As I said, we're going to go from the customer backwards, right? The sales backwards in the value chain of the company. So first thing we look at is the sales information, which is basically how much of the product was sold and at what price was it sold, and during each month. So all of this data, most of this data is available for the entire 24 months. So from April 2019 all the way to March 2021, to show all the different impacts that happened, right? The BS4 to BS6 transition, the impact of COVID, the recovery from COVID, and so on and so forth. So what you see in the sales data is, as I said, the 10 gear assemblies, which are the finished products that ACE is selling. And for each of those gear assemblies, you see the sales for each month. For example, what you're seeing right now is the April 2019. It shows the total sales of that gear assembly, the numbers to 8,960 units of that finished product were sold, and the price at which it was sold, 420 rupees. That was the price it was sold at, and so on. So you'll see for May 2019, June 2019, quantity and price for all of the months, right? The 24 months. So that's the first data set that you'll see. And when you see this data set, I think you'll see the impacts that we talked about in the sales. You'll see that the products number 1, 2 are the BS4 parts. You'll see that there, the sales of those products. So one of the things that I want you to analyze is what happens to sales of those BS4 products as the transition to BS6 happens on April 1st, 2020. So that's the first question. And then you'll see that the parts number 3 to 8, they are applicable for both BS4 and BS6. So that means that their sales are not going to stop just because of BS4 or 6. But can you see some seasonal pattern in the year? That's my second question. Seasonal pattern means at some point in the year, the sales is high, and then another point in the year, the sales is low. Because we have 2 years, we can start to see potentially some seasonal patterns. So my second question is, are there any seasonal patterns you see in the sales data? And then the last set of products, the BS6 products, which initially you'll see 0 because BS6 will not kick in until April 1st, 2020. And then you'll start to see their sales. So the question on that one is, what is the pattern of sales of these BS6 products? When did they start selling, and why did they start selling at that point when you did see their sales start? So that is the third question. The fourth question is, what is the impact of COVID on the sales of these products? So as production actually and sales actually slowed down after the pandemic struck in March 2020, what kind of impact are you seeing from the pandemic through the next several months, right? As the first wave hit and then receded, what kind of impact do you see in the sales of these products? So that's another question I have. Then I also want to find out some things like what are the products that are giving me the highest sales quantity, and what are the products that are giving me the highest sales value? Value means revenue, right? Which means not only so if you multiply the quantity and the price, and that's when you get the sales value. So which products give me the best sales value that I should pay more attention to? Because I obviously want to pay a lot of attention to products that are giving me a lot of revenue. I want to make sure that there's no shortage of those products and so on. So those are other questions I have on that first table, right? What's the products that are giving me the maximum revenue? What are the products that are giving me the minimum revenue? Which means I might rethink whether it's worth selling those products in the next coming years. So those are some questions I have on that first table to see.
Okay. The next table seems to be more from a regional perspective, I see. Yeah. Maybe you can help us understand this table?
Yes, absolutely. So what we then say is, because ACE Gear sells in all 4 regions of the country, right? And automobile clusters are there, as you know, in multiple parts. So around the west, right, Mumbai, Pune, especially, you have a cluster of manufacturers. And in the south, of course, Chennai is the Detroit of India. So there's a lot of manufacturing activity. There's also east and north, where significant activity happens for companies such as Tata Motors and Mahindras and so on. So the regional sales distribution is given for just 3 months, and it's given only for the 8 products in this particular case. This because, of course, the product 9 and 10 were not selling in that particular 3 months we looked at: October 2019, November 2019, and December 2019. So this is called the Q3 of the financial year 20. So you'll see 3 months. And for each of the 3 months, you'll see for the 8 products that were selling at that time, you'll see the overall sales, but you'll also see in which region how many units of that product sold. So you'll see north, east, west, and south. So if you take gear assembly 1, for example, in October 2019, it sold 14,400 units, right? And most of the sales came from east and south. So 11,200 units in east and 3,200 from south. There were no sales in north and west for that particular assembly. That could be because that assembly is used by a particular manufacturer who only has factories in east and south, right? That could be the reason for that. And similarly, you'll see for all of the 8 gears, what's the regional sales for each of the 4 regions. So that's what's there in this table. And in terms of questions around this table, I want to understand, which regions are most important to me. Where is it that I'm getting the maximum sales quantity, but also the maximum sales revenue? Now you have to look at both tables to figure the revenue side of it. So that's one part I want to find out. And then I also want to find out, is there, I could, for example, I could give specific focus to some regions by appointing a regional sales agent. So what these regional sales agents do is they're actually stationed or located in that particular region, in one of the cities, and they will make sure that the customers in that region get regular visit, their feedback is incorporated, the schedules are clarified, and so on. And the agents can actually help improve customer relationship, but also improve the sales. So if I want to appoint a few agents, then which regions should I appoint these agents in, and how many agents should I appoint in each region? If I want to appoint the agent in such a way that it is somewhat related to the amount of revenue I'm making from that region. So every region in which I'm making more than a certain number of products are sold or revenue is gathered, I want to appoint those agents. And I have a fixed budget for how many agents I can appoint. Then how should I appoint those agents? Which region should I appoint more, and which region should I appoint less? So that's another question that I'd like to have. And then I'd also like to see, are there some products that are clustered in some region, right? Some products are only in certain region, some products are only in certain other region. Is there a pattern like that? So those are some of the questions that I have from a regional perspective.
Okay. Then the next table seems to be, let me unfreeze this, and now let's look at this table. Okay.
Now this one is actually about production, right? So we talked earlier in the case study how, based on how much you sell, you want to start producing enough so that you do not miss any sales, right? So you have enough product to sell, depending on the customer demand. If the customer is demanding 10,000, then if I have only 9,000, I'm going to lose 1,000 of sales, right? So basically, I don't want to do that. So I want to make enough so that I can satisfy all the demand that's there. But I don't want to make too much, because if I make too much, then that product will lie idle as inventory, either with me or in the regional distribution center or somewhere. So that's also not good. Another thing that is important from a production planning perspective is you don't want production to go up and down as much as the variation in sales. So sales may suddenly peak in one month and drop in another month because there are many factors. Like, for example, if there's a strike, a labor unrest in a car manufacturer's factory, and as you all follow the headlines, Toyota had such a major unrest in 2019, for example, that they had to shut down the factory for a number of months. So then what happens is suddenly your demand from your customers is going to drop in 1 month. Or it could be a new model that's getting launched by that manufacturer. And initial months, you have very high demand, right? Because customers are just trying to get their hands on the product as quickly as they can. A recent example is Mahindra, where they introduced a new Thar, right? The Thar SUV. And the demand is so much that even if they produce for one whole year, they can't catch up to the waiting list, right? So those types of things happen where the demand is fluctuating a lot. But you can't flex your production. You don't want to change your production so rapidly, because then it means that number of labor will be idle for some time, and suddenly they'll be overworked and you won't have enough labor. So what you want is a production that is more smooth. It should be responsive to demand. But you don't be as much jagged, going up and down rapidly like the demand. So you have to have a production plan that's more smooth and follows the sales plan. So what you see in this table is for all of the 10 assemblies that we make, you'll see a thing called beginning inventory, which means at the start of the month, how many of those products are already in my store, right, finished goods store, or in my warehouse. And then you see how much was actually produced that month, and you'll see the ending inventory, which is at the end of the month, how much products did I have on hand at the end of the month. So for every single one of those months, from April 19 to March 21, you'll see the beginning inventory of the gear assembly 1, for example. You'll see how much of gear assembly 1 was produced that month, and then you'll see how much of the inventory is still lying with me at the end of the month. And I think, as you can logically imagine, the ending inventory, the inventory that I have at the end of the month, will be equal to how much did I have at the beginning, how much did I make, and then how much did I sell. So logically, you can put those three things together to find what's the ending inventory. And so similarly, you have that data for all the 24 months for all the 10 products, right? So that's what you see in this particular table. One thing you see is that production does vary. So if you look at gear assembly 1, we produced 7,000 in April, we increased to 9,000 in May, and then we kept 9,000 for some months, and probably then we start decreasing or increasing depending on the customer demand. So you see that it's further to 10,000 in September and so on. So there is a pattern to this. But if you see the same gear assembly 1 in the previous table, if you see the sales, if I can go back to the first table on the top, right? If you see the sales of gear assembly 1, it was actually 8,960, then it fell to 7,960, then it suddenly increased to 10,960, and then 5,960, and so on, right? So you see that there's a lot of ups and downs in the sales of the product. But production is also going up and down, but it's not going as rapidly up and down. And this is the job of what we call the sales and operations planning, right? That we saw in the chart earlier, which says, okay, how is my sales going to behave? And therefore, how is my production should look for each month? So the sales and operations planning and the master production scheduling, which is the next step we saw, these two activities will make sure that we produce the right amount and that we produce it in a smooth way and not so up and down as much as the sales is.
So Shiv, just for my understanding, I mean, do I understand that each gear assembly is manufactured by a different machine and has different as people associated with that manufacturing. Because the reason I'm asking that question is that we are trying to smooth each row and we're not taking the total and smoothing the total, right?
Yes,
So,
that's an excellent question. We should also be smoothing the overall production. So that is also what the NPS tries to look at, like what is the resources available. So to your question, it is all shared, right? It's not dedicated lines. You'll see later on that in the production scheduling part of the case study that the same hobbing machine is actually used to make two different gears, right?
Okay.
So yes, it is all shared, and the goal is definitely, like you said, to smooth not only one product but to smooth the entire system.
Okay.
So two observations I had, Shiv. First is, this table that you've shown us seems very similar to the ledger that we were seeing in the e-commerce case. Because there, what we saw was that opening stock plus incoming goods minus sales was equal to closing stock. And it seems to me, at least at first glance, that you're looking at something similar here, right?
Except that the only thing is that their incoming can be anything. Variation of incoming is not a problem there. But here, it has to be smooth because for whatever we discussed just now, production needs to be smoother. You can't just have variability production.
Right. The second sort of thing that immediately strikes me is that if production is smooth and sales are sort of variable, then the amount that I have in my warehouse will keep changing constantly. Actually, it'll have big swings, and that would be another challenge perhaps for the warehouse manager to manage.
Yes, absolutely, Willem. That is very true, and that is the role the inventory plays, right? Inventory is both bad and good, or good and bad, right? So the bad aspect of inventory is if you have a lot of inventory, then it's idle products, it is locked up capital, it is not actually being used further in the value chain. But the good part of inventory is that it helps you to do the smoothing. It makes sure that your your production does not exactly match your sales, because you can dip into the inventory when you need more, and if you're producing more, you can add to the inventory. But as you said rightly, the inventory is a very important thing to manage. The store, the space that is required, the security that's required to manage the inventory, the warehousing, and sometimes some production, like we know in the case of vaccines now, cold storage is required, not in this kind of product, but those things are all part of the inventory management. Is do you have the right storage? Do you have the right conditions, ambient conditions for the storage? Do we have enough security and control over the inventory? So that's very important. So one of the questions that therefore I will have in this is, how do you manage inventory from a warehouse manager perspective? How much is the maximum and the minimum? And therefore, what is the kind of percentage variation I'm having in that inventory over the 24 months, right? So how big a space should I take, right? Like, or should I, what's the level of variation that you see in that inventory is an important question in this exercise.
So you have given us the inventory data as well, right, Shiv? So, and to me, at first glance, it seems very similar to the production plan. So what is the difference between the two? Maybe you can explain this table and also tell us what is the difference from the production plan.
Yes. So the first table we just saw was is called the production plan for the finished product. So think of if you think back on that slide, we saw there is two stages in this production, right? So first we have to take the blanks and we have to make the gears, and then we have to assemble the gears together and test and pack and ship it. So these are the two stages, right? So what you see in this table right here on the screen is a finished product assembly production plan. So that means I have to make 7,000 assemblies in April 2019. I think that's what you see there, right? But to make 7,000 assemblies, I need to have the two components available to make the assembly. So what you see in the below table is actually the plan for the first stage, which is how do I make the two gears and how much do I make each month, so that I can then create the assembly in the second stage. So what you see here is the gears 2A, 2B, 3A, 3A, 3B, and so on. So these are the gears actually required to make the assemblies 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we are showing the 6 just for the sake of managing the amount of data. So for each of those assemblies, there are 2 gears that are required, and what is the production plan for those 2 gears? So this is how we go level by level, right? We start with how much we produce of the finished product, how much should we produce of each of the sub-assemblies, and how much should we produce of each of those parts, and so on. So what you see here is the production plan for the individual gears themselves, because the hobbing and broaching are the 2 steps required to make the individual gear. And then the assembly is the next stage where we put the gears together, test it, and align it and pack it and ship it.
Okay. That actually, then my natural question is, what was the term that you used? Bill of material?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The term that you had used on the slide was bill of material, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Here you're seeing the bill of material in action, right?
And that should be a little bit of comfort for us, perhaps, because then from a purchasing perspective, I can I can smooth out the purchases because the same blank is being used into products.
Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Absolutely. So you even if you have, let's say, more demand for 3A, but at the same month you have less demand for 4A, that means you don't have to change your purchasing of blank 011, because there'll be more use in one place and less use in another place. So the more you have common components, the more you can actually smooth your production and make the product structure less complex. And this is the reason that automotive manufacturers go for platforms, the strategy of platforms. So if you look at many cars, they can be built on the same platform. So for example, right now the Volkswagen Group is launching a platform called MQB A0 in India. And on top of this single platform, which uses common components in the chassis and common engines, they can make SUVs, they can make compact sedans, they can make mid-size sedans, they can make hatchbacks. So all of these, and the strategy behind that is exactly this: is you have fewer components, you have fewer sub-assemblies on which you can build multiple different types of products.
Very, very interesting. So Shiv, all the other Excel sheets have the same data, right? There's no other raw data.
Yes, there is one more aspect. So here we're seeing the scheduled production of finished product, sales of finished product, then regional sales, and we saw the production of finished products, then we saw the production of the gears themselves. And then there is the aspect of scheduling, which is shift by shift, how much do I need to make in the hobbing machine and in the broaching machine. So that's the data. We haven't probably seen it. And then there's also data on purchasing.
Okay.
So we got all the data from Shiv Milan for this particular exercise.
Yes.
Now, this is a very different case from the earlier one we saw, right? The FabMart case, because here this is more about manufacturing. But there are many common elements, and that is what we can see, right? Because if you look at the key questions that were asked, some of these questions are very similar to the questions that were asked in the earlier case. Like
that is true,
sales trends and so on are very similar to the earlier case.
And these were the questions that Archana was asking. She basically was one of the first questions that she was looking at is what is the revenue pattern, right? And I think we looked at some of that in the FabMart case as well. So of course, there we looked at what were the daily revenue trends. We looked at which SKU gave us the most revenue. We looked at which day of the week gave us the most revenue. I think here, because the time horizon is a little broader, we may be able to see some better patterns. So I think in that case, we didn't see any patterns at all.
We will see trends. Probably we'll see trends here, and especially because we have this interesting BS4, BS6 thing, right? BS4 versus BS6. BS4, and actually it's supposed to taper off. BS4 is supposed to decline, BS6 is supposed to increase. And these combination BS4, BS6, things which can be used for both BS4 and BS6, hopefully will show no increase or increase. They'll show some increase, generally increasing trend. So that is one we should see. The other is that we should basically be able to see some impact of the lockdown. It's a pandemic year, something we should be able to see.
Definitely.
Those kind of issues, for 15 days we couldn't see anything there. So nothing could be seen. Here we should see. And the other thing, this is a 2-year period. So much more interesting to correlate corresponding month to corresponding month. April of 1 year to April of the next year. May of 1 year to May of the next year. Like that, we should be able to do some correspondence.
Yes.
Again, there, because of 15 days, we couldn't see all that. So while maybe the methods may be the same, I don't know. We'll see whether we can use the same methods. Some of the insights we may get may be looking very different in this case.
Possibly. But the questions, there are still, I think there's still some similarity in questions. Okay, so these guys, as an example, are asking what is the star seller gear assembly and poor seller gear assembly. I think some of these questions we asked in FabMart also, no? So there is some pattern, but some difference. I think that is the way I would look at it.
Okay. So yeah, let's see the data. I mean, let's just take a quick look at the data again.
So and right now I think we'll focus on the first table. I think Shiv has given us a lot of tables, right? So he's given us sales data, he's given us regional sales data, he's given us production details, he's given us oh man, GB, this is lots of data, man.
Yeah, let's say we'll just for the first, I think let's just look at the sales data to start with. We'll come back to these later.
Yeah.
As he said, we're going to work back from sales, right? We're going to start with sales, look at inventory, look at production, scheduling, and look at materials management and all that. It's going to go in some sequence. So let's start with sales. I think sales.
Yeah.
But this data is it good enough for us to do our analysis? Because this is going to be tough, no?
Yeah, this.
You want to do month-on-month this is not a good representation, I think.
Yeah, maybe we should ask. What strikes me, GB, this almost looks like the output of a pivot table, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks. Can we ask him to produce the data in some other format?
Yeah, we should do that.
Because clearly, what format do we need? What would we like?
What we need is actually a table which says given gear assembly, given a month, what was the quantity sold at what price?
What price? We need this is output of a actually it's output of a we need the input. We need basically to see the gear assembly. The type, I think the BS4 should be written separately. We don't want to see it along with the gear assembly. So that we can do that, right? We want to see is it a BS4 or a BS6? So we want BS4 in a separate column. So we want gear assembly number, we want whether it is BS4 or BS6 or a combination BS4 and BS6 together. Then each month, and for that month, how much quantity was sold at what price? That's what we want to see.
Yes.
So this data, I mean, producing it from this output of the pivot table is not going to be easy to. You should just ask him to produce the data from the ERP in that format, I think.
Sure. Let me go into that.
Okay.
Okay. So GV, I've got the data from the ERP folks. Let's take a look at it. Okay. Here is what they've given me. Okay. So
this is pulled according to what you want. Oh, okay.
This is
you got the category.
Yeah. Correct.
Got the month, quantity, price. Fantastic. What is production?
And he's also given the production actually the same thing.
What is production?
How much of gear assembly 1 was produced in April 19? How many units were produced?
Oh, quantity is number sold. So 8,960
was sold. Maybe I'll rename it. Okay. We'll call it sales.
Yeah, 8,960 was sold and 7,000 were produced. Okay, all right. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And you can see, so a couple of points I want to make here, GV. Okay, first of all, this if you look at column D, it's got a slightly funny look. No, it's got some numbers written at the.
I know. Yeah, I don't know why you pulled it like that.
But if you look at actually this value field, it just says.
Oh, it is it's just a format, is it?
It's just a format. Okay, so let's look at what, let's say, format cells. Let's see what it's saying. It's some custom format. You see this?
Yeah, numbers. Yeah. Pull it. Take out the numbers. You don't want it.
I can just make it plain numbers, no?
I think so. Yeah. Let's just make it. Because analysis. Let's do any analysis. Tough.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
Okay, so let me do this for the whole column then. You just write everything as numbers. Okay. Now, what do we need? So first thing we need to do is to figure out which financial year this is, right? April 19 is what financial year?
Why do we need that?
Because all analysis we have to do by financial year, not by calendar year.
You want to sum up the revenues for 1 year, like that?
For one financial year.
Okay. Or we need to do. Or you want to compare April 19 with April 20, something like that. You want to do.
So April 19 to April 20 we can do without too much complication, no? But the problem is that we need to do two things. First is we need to do some processing to compute revenue for quarter 1, as an example.
Quarter wise. Okay. Yeah. So April is.
Okay.
Is there a formula for quarter? Can you do from April 25 quarter?
So that there is no easy formula. Okay. So first thing we have to do is what we need to do is just April 19 for this. First, let's figure out what is the month. Forget the year. So let's do some. I think the idea is first let's just do some data massaging so that some data that we are going to need again and again. Some columns we will just add. Okay.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So consistently we are going to need a month label. Yeah, because see there, if you remember when we did the FatMart case, we had dates and then we needed to compute the date because we wanted to look at day-wise trend. Now, since Archana has asked us monthly trends, we will want the month label. So just like we had computed day there, we will compute month here.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Good. Yeah.
Have it ready. Now we want to know which quarter this is.
How do I do that?
Correct. So there is unfortunately no easy way of doing this in the spreadsheet. Okay. But we always have VLOOKUP as a tool at our disposal.
Okay.
So let's create a temporary sheet called MISC or whatever you want to call it, right? Temp or MISC or something. And we'll create a table which will say month and quarter.
Okay. All right.
April quarter.
Well, you're right. So it's easy to write it. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Only 12 we have to do. Right. So it's simple. Not very difficult.
Okay.
And now here we will do quarter is VLOOKUP this month, right? The month label. And we look it up on again. This table. Again, I'll need to do the $$ thing. Right?
Second column,
exact match.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Drag it. Okay. Very nice.
So now let's go and check whether, yeah, see, July is quarter 2. So the next thing we need to do is to compute a fiscal year, right? And again, most spreadsheets are designed for a calendar year. They are not, unfortunately, designed for a fiscal year. The Indian fiscal year, I'm not sure if our students know, but the Indian fiscal year is from April 1st to March 31st.
Right.
So the fiscal years so the calendar year may be 2020, but in that calendar year, you will have two fiscal years actually. So let us again, similarly, create a lookup table.
Okay.
And here we'll do April 19, May 19, and I can just drag this and get up to December 20. Okay. Actually, we need it till. So, how much data have they given us? They have given us from April 19 till.
I think the March 21 they've given us.
March 21, no? So then we need that. Okay, let's go here. So till March 21. And now April 19 is fiscal year 1920. Because it's the fiscal year that begins on April 1st, 2019 and ends on 31st March 2020. So it's called fiscal year 1920.
You can copy paste that till March of. Yeah.
Okay, and this is of course now going to be the next fiscal year, right? So it's going to be 2021. Okay, and again here we will just do a simple VLOOKUP. So I think GV, my thinking is that there are two sort of basic skills that people need to know about spreadsheets. Okay, the one is VLOOKUP and the other is
pivot table.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and graphs. I know how to plot graphs.
And graphs, yes, probably. Yes.
You know how to basically do VLOOKUP and then how to do a pivot table and how to copy the pivot table into something else with values, place in the values and with formatting and then make a graph. This is all it is actually. Most of the times, right? Most of the times. Plus this kind of massaging, some additional tables to make it, and some data cleaning and all. Okay,
yes. Okay.
Let's go. Let's see whether the correcting has come for.
Okay, let's go down. Yeah, seriously.
Okay, good. Yep.
The final thing, GV, I thought we should do, because if you go back to the FabMart case also, you'll realize all the time people kept asking us about revenue. Right? But if you look in the data, actually, we don't have revenue. We have only sales and price.
Okay, multiply it to the data.
So in there, if you remember, we had done this. Okay,
we had done this. We had done that. We had multiplied it by correct. Format. Format.
Yes, I format it first. Currency 00 and then double. This is it.
Nice.
So then some basic massaging of data.
Yeah. Now we can graph it. Now let's graph it.
So before that, I think we need to do some analysis. No, I think.
Okay. What
go back to ask the question. Okay, what was Archana asking us? She was asking us what is the trend in terms of monthly revenue, and then she wanted to compare the same month against, April 19 against April 20 and so on.
Right. So we have to compute. We have to total all the Aprils, all the Mays, and all that.
Correct.
Year-wise, something like that.
Yes.
Do it BS4, something like that. Yeah, you're right. Right.
Yes.
Let's make it.
Let's insert the pivot table.
Pivot table where we add up all the Aprils, Mays, Junes, and all. Monthwise you'll get, and also do it for BS4, do it for BS6, do BS4, BS6, and all total.
Okay? Yes. Hold on. First, so I've inserted a pivot table.
Okay.
So what we will do is, first thing, let us do this month 2, which was just that April, May, June thing that we had computed. And we will get fiscal year as columns. Okay.
I noticed it did it from Jan, it put it as Jan to December for some reason. Okay.
Yeah, so we will need to do a little bit of massaging by hand. Okay, so a little bit of manual work.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, how do you get? Oh, you put as column. Oh, first time using the column. No.
Yeah. Oh yes, first time you're using the column. Yes, that is true. So just as you can sum up across rows, you can also sum by column. So this is an interesting view of things. So let me just
the column. Okay, nice. Okay, and then in the values you want to put sum or something. Huh?
In the values we will put revenue.
Sum of revenues. Okay. Wow, you just did it. Huh? This is cool. Yeah. Really fast. Yeah.
Okay. Now, however, what you noticed was absolutely correct. Okay, so Excel by default will create it sorted from Jan to December. But actually, in our structure, the first month of the year is not Jan; it is April. So what we will need to do is we will have to do our favorite thing of copying and pasting.
Paste as values.
Let's first paste this as values. Yes.
Format.
And then we will.
Okay, you're saying you have to manually move that to the next class, huh?
Yeah. So let us first now these cells Jan, Feb, March, and cut them. Okay, not copy, cut. And then above the grand total, what we will do is we will say insert cut cells.
Okay.
And if you do that, you have got it.
Okay, all right.
Okay. And then I will go format data as usual. Now, just giving you a picture of what happened in FY 1920 versus FY 2021.
Monthwise.
No.
Monthwise.
Monthwise. And you can see April of 2021, which is April 2020, right? That is the April of 2021.
There are no sales.
There were no sales, 0 sales. And we know what happened in that month, right? There was complete lockdown.
Wow.
Actually, if you go to May of that year also, you will see that only 16 lakhs sales. Because the lockdown was only being partially lifted.
Then in fact in July it recovers a little bit and again goes back.
Correct.
In July a little bit, 1,33,000. It looked like it's recovering. Then again back 90.
Correct. Only by October you're getting back to the normal levels, no? Isn't it?
Yeah. But no, you're not even still. Yeah, 1,75,000. Yeah. September is 1,77,000 in 1920. And 1,75,000.
Slowly coming back to normal.
Slowly coming back to normal. Correct. But by February it has jumped, huh? February you have 2,45,000. Sudden jump.
February it has jumped, yes.
2 crore 45 lakhs. 2 crore 45 lakhs.
Correct. And March is even more. 2 crore 50 lakhs.
Okay. Interesting. Let us plot this, man. Now I think it's time to plot.
Yeah. So now we will. What will we do now? We will insert. Let's draw a graph. No,
yeah, line graph. I think it will be first. Yeah.
Line graph.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It looks like line graph is the best first.
insert.
You're not looking for recommendation. Okay, anyway, let's draw it.
Okay, let's look at the recommendation. Let's see what it says. It's always interesting to explore. Yeah, it's only seeing the line graph only.
Too much.
Okay.
So revenue, what do you want to call it? Monthly revenue. Right.
Yeah, monthly revenue. Let me just, or maybe I'll put it down below here. That is better, easier to look at now.
Yeah. It's a trend, I think, because
Monthly revenue track. Yes, I can do it. Yes.
What is the grand total? We don't need the grand total. Oh, grand total.
Grand total is actually, maybe we don't need it, no? Because it is coming up over 2 years.
No, but why is it doing it month-wise? Oh, month-wise April, that doesn't say anything. It's saying what is the add up 19. Okay, that is useless, I think, grand total. I column. I think delete I column, yeah.
Just a second.
Yeah, we don't need it. So this is saying something. It's saying 2021 is a growing year, recovery year. 1920 we start seeing a decline. April, of course, was terrible. Slowly it's recovering. So some story is being said here. Okay, nice.
Actually, the interesting thing, GV, and I have not noticed it when I was looking at the data in the table, but when you look at the graph, it shows you already in March of 2020, there was already some effect of the lockdown was already beginning to show.
Correct.
Yeah. So, okay, so already in March 2020, it was down, and then April, of course, was zero, completely zero.
And then there is this interesting pattern in the July. 1920, there was no COVID and all, but even 1920, you see 2 humps. So we have to ask you what that means, right? Something is going on there.
Yes.
Right? So it looks like July, August are lean months.
Correct.
Even September.
Yes.
But yeah, April, May is very high, and then again October, November, some
yes.
There.
So there is some seasonality. At least in 2019-20, you can see some seasonality.
Yeah.
2021 is possibly, everything is disturbed because of COVID now.
COVID, just recovery, just going back. All right, let's get the insight from Shiv. We can talk to him. He might be able to throw some light on the start. It's a good chart.
Sure.
Nice to show to him. So Shiv, we have done some homework on the first data set, which is about revenue analysis, which is are there trends? Can we see the trends something about this BS4 BS6 transition? Is there something about COVID that is coming out? And for those parts which are BS4 BS6 parts in the middle, right, between 3 and 7, 8, I think 3 and 8, right, those parts. Do we see any seasonality, right? Some trends. And do we see any regional, from the regional sales distribution? Do we see anything? Can we make out anything from the regional sales distribution? So on this, we did some work. And Milind, you want to share what our analysis shows and please comments?
So Shiv, here is what we did. We looked at the revenue both from not both, I would say all three. So we looked at it from a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, and a annual basis for the 2 years, and wanted your sense of. So the red cells are the cells that are the minimum in a year.
No, the key thing we have done, Shiv, based on whatever you present to talk to us, is that we did not put all the 24 months in one straight line. We tried to organize it in some slightly in a tabular form like this. But we put 12 months of the calendar year, and then we took the corresponding 12 months of the next financial year. So we put it next to each other, April next to April, May next to May.
Yes.
So the idea of thinking basically was that if there is seasonality or whatever it is, even if whatever it is, but the monthly information, May of one year and May of the next year, there should be some correspondence. So we said, okay, let us see whether or not between May of one year and May of the next year, is there an increase or a decrease in revenues? So that should tell us something. That is the philosophy on which we have built this. How does this make sense? I mean, is this a normal way of doing things? Or does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense, and companies use this quite a lot. So if you look at your even annual results announcements, etc., they always go quarter on quarter, which means this quarter of this year compared to the same quarter of last year. So that provides you quite a bit of insight into trying to take out the seasonality factor and try to actually compare what happened at this time of the year. So if you see in this table, it's clearly obvious that 2020-21 has been much worse than similar months of the previous year, almost for all the months, right? So you can clearly see that negative trend. So
that is all COVID. I presume, right? COVID impact.
Yes, absolutely. And then we can start to see the recovery at the last couple of months.
Would you call this people describe it as a V-shaped something recovery? Is it? Would you describe this?
Yes, it does look like that, right? If you see we can discount March because March already the COVID impact was there in the previous March, right? But if you just look at February, I think that's a really good, December to February, you can see that the volumes are quickly rising, right? In 2020-21 over the corresponding period of the previous year, which shows that the recovery was actually starting to become a V. But then, of course, this data doesn't show the second wave, which happened after March 2021, where we probably again it's become now a W shape, more like, right? Because we had a down, we had an up, and then we had a down again, and then hopefully we are now on the last of the W.
Right. And I think this sort of image that you described, Shiv, is perhaps a little easier to see on the quarter thing, no? Actually, in this quarter-wise table, I think Q4 there seems to be something positive going on.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the quarter shows a more aggregate view, showing that a severe downfall in quarter 1 due to COVID, and then persisting into quarter 2, starting to become less of a major issue in quarter 3, but then really starting to come back in quarter 4.
But at an aggregate level, 2021 was still below 1920, looks like.
Yes, Yes, if you see the overall sales has come down 31%, right? So that's a way to show it. The way I've shown it is really nice because the total line shows the reduction of about 31% of the revenue in 2020-21, mostly due to the impact of COVID. Across the whole automotive industry, this has been a major impact.
And you already sort of alluded to the second wave in the current financial year. So now when we will look at the results for the current financial year, we will compare them with 2021, is it, or with 1920?
Yeah, that's a great question. Ideally, most companies, what they're doing now, especially even in the IT industry and so on, when we talk about comparables, we are actually comparing 1920 because that was a normal year. Most of it was a normal year, except for the March when the COVID started to hit, right? So companies are actually almost dropping 2021 as an abnormal year and not something that you want to compare with. They're actually going back 2 years to compare a similar quarter or month with what happened in 1920 because that was a more normal year. So as we get back into normalcy at this point, I think it's more meaningful to compare 1920 rather than compare with 2021.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So we thought, Shiv, also that makes sense to show this as a graph. So this is roughly what the picture looks like.
Yes, this is very illustrative. Thanks for doing this because this is really showing the inherent seasonality of the industry, right? If you look at 2019-20, which is a more normal year, right? Just ignore the March month, but everything else, it shows that the first quarter of the financial year, this April, June, right, is very busy for companies such as ours, or ACE Gears, because ACE Gears is making gears, gear assemblies that then go into finished vehicles, and the sales of finished vehicles are highest during the festive season, which is September, October, November. So if the vehicle sales are very high in September, October, November, the transmissions need to be made probably in June, July, August, and the components that go into the transmissions need to be more of those are needed in April, May, June. So that's the pattern you see in this industry is about 4 to 5 months ahead of the actual demand peak of the finished vehicle, you see the demand peak in the component industry. And similarly, you see another little peak towards November as New Year sales happen in January, February, March. The last quarter is typically slower because you're actually not having a lot of production at that point because that reflects the sales in April, May for the finished vehicles.
So COVID was a double whammy in that sense. It came in April, the first wave.
Yes.
Exactly the time when you needed to peak your production. Huh?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was a very, very major impact because usually normally when you actually get your good sales, that's when it hit in the industry.
And this, what you were explaining to us, Shiv, at least to me, is more clearly visible in the quarter chart because I think there's too much detail in this monthly chart. But in this chart, I can see very clearly Q1 and Q3 are sort of peaks.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's important to choose the right time dimension, right? Because then it can show you the trends at an aggregate level without all the noise that comes when you look month on month. For example, from July to August in the previous monthly chart, it looks like an increase, right? But it's not a big deal because when you look at the overall quarter, you know that noise is then taken out, right? And you know that actually the is down. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'll jump to the next slide. Okay.
And also, quarter boundary is important from a financial perspective for companies. So presumably they will do things to ensure that their quarterly sales number is within the plan number or whatever, right? They'll push out sales, they'll do something.
Yes.
Incentivize something or something else to make sure that they get it.
That's very true. The stock market gives a lot of attention to quarterly numbers and results announcements, and so companies will have to make sure every quarter they manage expectations very closely with the analysts and shareholders and so on, and make sure that they have predictable performance on a quarter-by-quarter basis.
Okay, in this chart, what we're showing basically is how. So we saw that sales basically has been going up and down because of this BS4, BS6, COVID, and other thing. How did it impact production? So we have tried to put the production on one side and the sales on the other side, and want to see how well ACE Gears has been in terms of managing production. So presumably they have not changed their production sales is reduced, but they have tried to manage their production very carefully, not to reduce it too much, so that you can kind of even it out, smooth it out, something like that. So how well have they done is what we're trying to look at it first in the form of table, and then maybe the graph might show it in a better way. So first, any reactions on this?
Yes, this is a very interesting chart again. So I think it's a very good way to compare things. What we said in the beginning is kind of illustrated here, right? The sales quantities tend to fluctuate very rapidly. So for example, you see more ups and downs in terms of the sales quantities, but the production quantities almost follow the sales quantity. The overall shape of the graph is somewhat similar, right? But it's a smoother curve, what you see in the production compared to what you see in the sales. Because as we said before, we can't affect changes in the factory at the same pace as the changes that happen in the sales side, given that the availability of labor, availability of material, availability of production capacity, it's not that easy to change overnight, right? So that's the kind of thing you see overall, somewhat smoother curves. So for instance, if you see the orange curve, you see a dip in between in September and then a rise again. So you don't see that in the production because we have tried to smooth that part out.
Yeah, and also I guess that the fact that Jan, Feb, March, or April, May, June are basically historically we know that those are the busy months, so production has been planned accordingly. Right? April, May, June high, then slower down again, and then high again, and then slow again. So that is it's all part of the planning because we know that the seasonality is there every year.
Absolutely.
But if you look at the 1920 year, the November to December, there's a very sharp drop. But if you look at the production from November to December, it didn't drop. It didn't drop that much. It has gone from November to December.
Yes, yeah, that's another good example of smoothing that we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And then this was the same. I think what we had done by category, we had at that. Now we are looking at quantity sold instead of revenue. I think that's the only difference, right?
Yeah. The only thing we are seeing here is that some, I mean, there's some crossover is there, BS4 to BS6.
Yes. Okay, you can take it off.
Okay, this chart shows basically just like what we showed in revenues for categories. We try to do the quantities for categories. So BS4 quantities, BS6 quantities, and BS4 6 quantities. Now, there's some peculiar shapes in that. Like for example, for BS4, there's a hump, and then it falls off. Of course, it should fall off because we want to stop producing BS4 for some time. But there's a hump before it falls off. And similarly, the BS4 6 also there's some humps. So, any reactions to this? I mean, why we have these funny shapes in this curve?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. In fact, what happened with BS4 was that, as you very rightly said, knowing that those vehicles cannot be made or cannot be sold after April 1st, there was a bit of a rush by the manufacturers around the end of the year to clear and sell as many products as possible, because they knew that their pipeline is going to be limited at the end of the year. So there was a rush to produce and sell as many products or vehicles as possible towards the end of 2019, right around December, January time. So with that, they were on the component suppliers in September, October, which was very, very high, right, compared to the normal sort of way we see, because they were trying to clear the whole pipeline and produce and sell as many as possible to compensate for the last quarter, which is going to be weak. So that's a hump you see, but that's a really good observation that we've got, right? That did happen with the BS4 vehicles. And then, of course, you see the impact of COVID, very sharp drop in sales around April, May, and then a very slow pickup that happens afterwards. And then you also see that the BS6 gears are contributing, but not at the level of the BS4 yet, right? Because it takes time to establish those products.
So the hump we did not see in the revenue curve. Primarily, the observation might be that this quantity is coming from the low price gear assemblies, which is why we didn't see the hump there.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I have a little personal work and I will be back in some time. And I have, I'll start streaming after that. Okay.